Okay, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be learning Maseches Menachos Daf Mem Ches and Daf Mem Tes Amid Aleph. Be totally honest, I'm not yet sure how we're going to do the next 2 days, if I'm being totally straight. Was planning on preparing tonight for a shiur tomorrow morning, but I just found out I have a meeting at 9:30, so I shall not be preparing tonight. And if we're behind, so be it, we'll catch up and keep you posted. We're on the top of Mem Ches Amid Aleph, and we learned about a case scenario about a brisa that was mentioned in front of Rav Chizda, and the brisa was about being podeh a particular food. So the Gemara said, how could you be podeh this? After all, if you're going to be parak me'avroi, then that's not lifnei Hashem, it's ifsaluhu biyotze. You can't bring things out of the Beis HaMikdash. How are you going to be podeh something inside the Beis HaMikdash if you're ma'al chulun la'azar? So the Gemara says it's automatic. Really, it's going to be migavoy. The foods that we're discussing, the extra chalos, as it were, because that was the conversation. Those extra chalos would be they'd become chulin, but you weren't being ma'ayil chulin la'azara. It just happened automatically. So the Gemara pushed immediately and asked a question, 6, 7 lines down on Memches Madalev. Omer le Ravina le Ravashi v'atanya kshehu podan ein podan ela bachutz. Unlike the Gemara's conclusion, which we had said at the end of Shabbos yesterday, at the end of the shiur, that when we're poda these two breads, we don't bring them out and be poda them. We leave them in and we're poda them. But the brisa doesn't say that way. Our answer was they're poda mi gavoy, they're poda from within, but it's midi dimimela, so it's not like you're being ma'ayel chul nazar. But over here, the brisa says the exact opposite, that we're talking about where the breads were actually taken out. So says the Gemara, ha vaday Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. This has to be according to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. The Rebbe, if it had been that this was like the sheet of Rebbe, the Gemara says, so if sluluhu biyotze, Rebbe has no tolerance. The second it leaves the square footage of the Azara, you're out. You're instantly puzzled, and that just can't be the reality, because we have from the Brisa at the bottom of the page and it's actually the top 3 words on this page, Vashar nechalos bepidyon. But if you take it out and you hold like Rebbe, it's instantly puzzled. That's not a pidyon. Elamai, it must be that the brisa that says that ein podan ela bachutz must be Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Good. So Amar le Rav Acha Bereder Rava le Ravashi. Lema, perhaps what we've learned, the case that we started with at the end of shiur yesterday, the bottom 2 lines on Mem Zayin Amud Beis, that shachat shnei kvasim al arba chalos, that case says our Gemara 10 lines down, lema tahavitiv to the Rav Yochanan. It sounds like that our case might be a rejection of Rav Yochanan. And the next word here should not be miha, it should be meha de itmar, from that which we learned. What did we learn? This is a statement of the Amoraim that we'll see later, and we've had multiple times in Shas already. Toda, a korban toda sheshachta al shmonim chalos. Normally a toda is shechted with 40 chalos. Here, if it was shechted for 80 chalos, so what's the din? So Chizkiya Amar Kitchu Arbay Mitoch Shmonim. Half of them are holy. 40, the ones that are required by halacha. So the Arbaim Chalos, those are the ones that are going to have a din of Kedusha. But Rav Yochanan, what does he hold? Rav Yochanan Amar Lo Kitchu Arbaim Mitoch Shmonim. He says that there's no sanctity at all. But if you compare the way that Rav Yochanan learns up this case to the bottom 2 lines of Mem Zayin Amud Beis, there we said Shachat Shnei Kvasim al Arba Chalos. There we had double the number of Chalos, and there we concluded that there was Kedusha. So Rav Yochanan L'chora is against our brisa. So that's why the Gemara says that perhaps a tosav, perhaps it's a tiyuvta of Rav Yochanan, because our brisa seems to indicate that if you have double the chalos, that 2 of them are kosher, half of them are kosher. Yet here, Rav Yochanan says, Amar lo kitchu arba'im mitoch shmonim. So it's a stira. It's a tiyuvta of Rav Yochanan. Says the Gemara, no, that's actually not the case. V'la mi itmar Allah, didn't we already learn about the brisa that we just saw, that Amar Bzera kol modim hecha do Amar likteshu arba'im mitoch shmonim dekatru. That's where you verbally state what you intend, that 40 out of the 80 are the ones I'm talking about. In that case, yes, of course, there will be Kedusha. Hachanami, perhaps in our case, in the brisa on the bottom of Mem Zayin Amud Beis, the way Reb Yochanan would have to learn that brisa is to say that you verbalize it likteshu tarte mitoch arba, and therefore, because you verbally stipulated and articulated what you wanted with 2 of the 4, That's mekadesh them. But without a stipulation, without a verbal comment, then taka it's true. Then even the two wouldn't be. So it's not a stira. We've touched up already Rabbi Yochanan, and we're good to go. We're a third of the way down on Memches Mid Aleph. Tani Reb Chanina Tirasa Kamei de Rabbi Yochanan. I don't recall ever hearing this name before, but I don't know if that means anything. It's certainly not common. Anyone familiar with the name? No?
Well, I'm looking to see if there's a Rashi, he'll often say it's, Shem Makom.
Shem Makom, Shem Adam. Yeah.
Is it there? I didn't find it.
It is.
Where?
It's not spelled the same way. It's spelled the Vav. Turasa, Shem Makom.
How far down are you?
Yeah, I can't find the Rashi. Thank
15
you.
lines down.
15 lines down.
It's you take your Rabbeinu Gate of 5 lines down.
I have a different surah than you.
Yes, so do I. Oh, no, you're right. I have yours. So it's a little more than halfway down. Shem Makom, what do you mean?
Yeah, it's just
Spelled
spelled
completely
with Vav.
differently. And two olives.
Oh.
It's spelled completely differently.
So maybe it's not the same.
I don't know.
No, it's just Rashi's Gemara.
It's like Yiddish where they throw in the eye.
Yeah. Rashi's Gemara clearly had a different spelling of the name of the city. Maybe it's a different city, I don't know, but it's
Shem Makom.
Turasa.
Thank you.
Okay, so Rav Chanina from Turasa coming to Rav Yochanan, he brought a brisa. Let's remember Tani, where he brought a brisa. It wasn't him talking, he was just quoting. Shachat arba kvasim al beis chalos. Let's say that you did have extras, but it wasn't double the chalos. It was double the kvasim. That's an expensive mistake to make. Chalos are cheap, $5 a pop, $8 if you're buying the expensive branded jewel, $12 if you're buying private. These chalas that we get in our homes, they're expensive, but Lamaisa, they don't compare to kvasim. You're only supposed to bring two, a couple $100 a pop. You brought 4. So you definitely overdid it. So what's the din? Moshech shnayim mehem. You pull 2 of them. V'zorek daman shelo lishman. You take 2 out of the 4 kvasim, and you intentionally do their shchita shelo lishma. Why? Because if you did it lishma, then you would have been yotze shtei kvasim, and then the next 2 animals, because they were shaykh to being the shtei kvasim, now they cannot be used. So what we want to do, says the Gemara Chap, the Gemara says, let's make the first 2 shelo lishma. It could be eaten as a regular shlamim. Then the next 2 are used for shtei kvasim. And that way you prevent losing the latter 2 korbanos. Brilliant move, but is it mutter? So the Gemara says, this is a brisa, right? That's what the brisa says. Your moshech shnayim hem ezorik daman shelo lishman. Sheim iyata omer kach. If you don't do this, if you don't do the first 2 animals shelo lishma and eat them not as kivsei atzeres, but rather as shlamim, if you don't do that, hifsadatos ha'achronim, then you lose out on so much. You lose out on the next 2 animals. So this was the brisa that was brought in front of Rav Yochanan. What was Rav Yochanan's response? Amar lo Rav Yochanan, I'm not sure I understand. V'chi omrim lo la'adam amod v'chatei b'shvil shetizke. Do we say that you should intentionally do something wrong in order to save animals, in order to save anything? This is not the way we bring korbanos. To do a korban shelo lishma is not kishmak. And here you're saying it as a ruse. You're saying, you're quoting the brisa. He says to his Talmud, you're quoting me a brisa, I'm having a hard time. You want me to do the first 2 korbanos shelo lishma to enable the second 2 korbanos to not lose them? Meichatesi. Vatnan. After all, a varichatas, let's say you have the limbs of a chatas, which is potentially meant to be edible. Shenis arvu, that got mixed up a vari ola, which is not edible. Now, really, the chatas parts are not supposed to go up on the mizbeach. And that's not where they're supposed to go. The ola is. So they got all mixed up. So you have a big machlokas tanoimer. Rabbi Eliezer omer yitnu lemala. You can put them up. V'roe ani as b'sar chatas lemala ki'ilu eitzim. Yes, we put the chatas up there, the mixture. We don't want to lose the opportunity to put the ola up there because it's kalil. I want to make sure that I'm doing my job. My ola has to go up there. You're not supposed to put a chatas up. You're right, but I treat it like eitzim. I have no kavana. It's not a kavana for a murim, a varim, nothing. It's eitzim. That's the shita of Rabbi Eliezer. But v'chachamim omrim, look what their shita is, and this is the shita that we're going to focus on. Remember what we're trying to talk about here is, do we say the principle of chatei b'shvil shetizke? But according to the Chachamim, v'Chachamim omrim tu'ubar tzurasan v'yetzu lebeis hasrefa. We ruined it all. Remember, we said we had a mixture, chatas and ola, the avarim of chatas and ola. What do we do with it? Nothing. We wait until it starts to decompose a little bit, or the tzura changes. We discussed this. We discussed it on Shabbos in a way which wasn't the typical understanding. But the typical understanding of tu'ubar tzurasan is if you kill an animal for the first few minutes, it just looks like it's sleeping. And then once it turns and it really looks like it's mamish dead, then that's tu'ubar tzurasan. So why do Chachamim say that? Amai. If it's true that we say that you can be chatei kadesh tizke lema amud v'chatei b'shvil shetizke, why didn't the Chachamim say do the wrong thing and put the avarim of the chatas up on the mizbeach? Because otherwise you won't fulfill your obligations of the olah. Elamai, says Rav Yochanan, I see from the Chachamim that they don't say chatei kadesh tizke. So it says the Gemara as follows: Amod v'chatei b'chatas b'shvil shetezake b'chatas amrinan. When do we say that you are allowed to do something wrong for the sake of saving something else? That's within the same sugya. I'm doing something wrong with a chatas to save me a chatas. No problem. I'm willing. However, Amod v'chatei b'chatos b'shvil shetizke be'ola lo amrinon. That I don't allow. That's not allowed. So let's go back to the case that we started with. We had shtei kvasim. We actually had arba kvasim. And what did we say? Take the first two and do it shelo lishma to save the last two. So according to this answer, we're good to go. When do we say amod v'chatei? Only if the area in which you're doing something wrong is the same area in which you're saving something. I had 4 kvasim. I took 2 and did them shelo lishma to save the latter 2 from being ruined. No problem. But the brisa that Rav Chizda brought as a question, it's actually a mishnah. The mishnah that Rav Chizda brought was when you were going to be chote with a chatas to save an ola. No. Only when it's in the same machane, the same halachic sugya. That's when we allow one to be amod v'chatei, do something that's slightly wrong in order to save something else. No problem. But it has to be within the same world of chatas, ola, kvasim. So let's just review our case, which because we're talking about kivsei atzeres. If one in fact starts with 4 kvasim when really we only needed shtei kvasim, so the halacha is you take the first 2 and you're chote. You do the zrikas dam of the first 2 of these 4 animals that you earmarked. You do them shelo lishman, eat them as a shlamim, and then the next 2 animals you use kivsei atzeres. Otherwise, you would have lost them. You would never been able to use them because they were already nidche for the sake of this korban. And you can't reverse it where the shtei kvasim are done first and then afterwards you make them into shlamim. That's not allowed. So it had to be this way. Rav Chizda, Rav Yochanan asks, no. As long as it's within the same machane, you're good to go. Chatas is fine. Kvasim is fine. But chatas to ola is not fine. Says the Gemara 3/4 of the way down. The Gemara asks, wait 1 second. I'll show you precedent where we don't allow one to be omed v'chatei in the same sugya, even within the same sugya. Says the Gemara as follows. V'atanya, we have a brisa that we've seen many times in Shas. Kivtzei atzeres. Let's say you have the arkvasim for the atzeres for Shavuos. Sheshachtan shelo lishman, and you did the shchita shelo lishma. Oh, sheshachtan, you did the shchita, but bein lifnei zmanon, bein la'achar zmanon. So you either did it shelo lishma, you did it too early, or you did it too late. What you didn't do is do it on time. Hadam yizarek v'habasar ye'achel. So you're not yotze, obviously. You can't do the korban early. You can't do it by Pesach. It's just Shavuos korban. It's got to be Shavuos. It's got to be the right time frame. So says the Gemara, in such a case, the dam can be nizrak and the basar can be eaten, but you're not yotze. Now, what if it was Shabbos? B'imhayas Shabbos, the Gemara says, quoting from this brisa, lo yizrok. You should not do zrikas hadam in this case. Let's say it's the Shabbos 2 weeks before Shavuos, and you decide, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the zrikas hadam, and I'm going to do the zrikas hadam, and you really shouldn't have. So v'im zorak on Shabbos, what do? Hurtza, lahaktir emur l'erev. It's allowed but it's just a matir to take the emurim and put them up on the fire afterwards. So the action that I would have done would have been a Shabbos morning action, a din b'di'evet, because it says the chatchila, if you do the shtei kvasim the wrong way, the kivsei atzeres wrong, you should not do the zrikas hadam on Shabbos. L'mais, if you did, it's mutter. So says the Gemara, what do we see over here? We see that lechatchila, we don't allow you to be amod v'chatei on Shabbos. Because if you were allowed, why wouldn't we allow the zrika lechatchila? Yes, we allow it b'di'evet. I'm masking. That's clear. That's exactly what the Brisa says. But if you're telling me that we have a general principle of amod v'chatei within one machaneh, they're both Shabbos tiksugyas. So why does the Mishnah by the Kivsei Atzeres say don't do the zrikas hadam on Shabbos? It should be mutter. Amod v'chatei on Shabbos for the sake of Shabbos. Lema amod v'chatei b'shvil shetiske. We should have allowed it, but we don't. So says the Gemara, amod chatei b'Shabbos k'dei shetiske b'Shabbos amrinan. Even by Shabbos, we would allow the zrikas hadam if the benefit of the zrika would be on Shabbos. But here, if you do the zrikas hadam on Shabbos, amod chatei b'Shabbos k'dei shetiske b'chol for after Shabbos, lo amrinan. That's not allowed. In fact, it might be usher because of hachana. I'm trying to salvage over here. It's Shabbos morning. It's Kivsei Atzeres. I did it at the wrong time. I thought it was next Shabbos, which was Shavuos. I did it this Shabbos. I wasn't paying attention. So I did the Zrikas Hadam at the wrong time. So should I do it Shelo Lishma, or should I have the right Kavana over here? Should I be Nizrak the Dam at all on Shabbos by the Kivsei? Right after the Shechita, I remembered. So says the Gemara, if the benefit of doing the Amod V'Chatei was going to be on Shabbos, before Shkias Achama, it's mutter. But that's not our case over here. Lo Amrinan. We don't say it in a case where it's going to be after Shabbos. Amod Chatei b'Shabbos K'shetizke b'chol lo Amrinan. And what was the benefit of the Zrikas Hadam b'di'eved? That was Hortza Lahakterim were in La'erev. You can't just throw things on the fire when there's no heter. It's Shabbos. So therefore, you're not allowed to do Zrikas Hadam here. But you might have thought this was a question on the general principle of Amod v'Chatei within one. So again, no, not really true. We are allowed to do it on Shabbos for Shabbos, but our case wasn't on Shabbos for Shabbos. Our case was on Shabbos for after Shabbos, and that's not allowed. Uvetarte mi lo amrinan. Wait a second. Do we not say Amod v'Chatei? Do we not say Amod v'Chatei across sugyas? We said already, if it's from Chatas to the world of Ola, it's not allowed. Really? I'll show you precedent that it is allowed. So it says the Gemara, 5 lines from the bottom, V'atznan. And this is a Mishnah that we have seen before, a long time ago. V'atznan. Chavis shel truma. Let's say that you had a barrel of something that was truma, a barrel of wine that was truma. Shenishbara begasa elyona. You'll recall, as we've spoken about extensively in previous Masechtas, that the wine vats that they had were structured in such a way that on the upper vat, they had this little kind of shallow square pit, and they would have people pressing the grapes. And when the juice would hit the bottom, it would kind of flow to the bottom and then go down a tube into the lower vat. So that was the structure. So right now, you're in the gas elyona, and the chavis of wine broke in the upper one. Now, as of right now, the wine is kosher wine. The problem is that the liquid is going to go into the lower vat. And that lower vat, says the Gemara, uvetachtona was chulin tmein. And now 2 bad things are going to happen. One is that the wine will become tameh. And 2 is that the tameh chulin you can't even sell. So you're losing a lot here. So what do? Can we save? Is there a way to salvage the wine from the broken barrel on the Elyona before it gets into the Tachtona? Is it possible? So says the Gemara as follows, 3 lines from the bottom. Mo de Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbi Yehoshua. The Tanoim agree, Shim yochel lahatzil mimenu revis b'tara yatzil. If you can save even only 1 revis, it's kedai. And you should do so. Try and save it if you can. A revis of kosher wine is worth saving. V'im lav. But if you're not able to do so, b'tahara. So then the Gemara says, Rebbe Lazar Omer, what do you do if you're not able to save it, b'tahara? So turning to the top of Menachos and Beis, Teiredu Satama, the Al Yatam En Biyad. And Rashi says, Teiredu Satama, Afal Gab, the Mifsada L'chulin. It would have had an application. There would have been uses for chulin betuma, but if the wine goes in there, if the truma goes in there, then it becomes a mix of truma and chulin tmeya, and now no one can drink it. So according to this Tana, if you're not able to save it betara, excuse me, if you're not able to save the wine betara, you let it get ruined. Now look at Rabbi Yeshua's shita. Top line of Menachos and Beis. The Gemara says of Rabbi Yeshua Omer, af yitame ena biyad. You're even allowed to collect the wine in a way that would make the wine tameh. So here's what you're doing. You're doing amod v'chatei. I'm being metame the truma wine that's dripping down. For what purpose? So that I can salvage the chulin. So we have truma, amod v'chatei in the world of truma, kadesh tizke by chulin. So what do we see? We see that we do allow, according to Rabbi Yeshua at least, we do allow amod v'chatei from one category to another category. Initially, we didn't say that. Initially, we said that if the amod v'chatei ledugma is by a chatas, and what you're salvaging is an ola, that's not allowed. Yet in this case that we see of the wine, that's the truma wine that's dripping down the vat system into the chulin tmeya, Rabbi Yoshua holds that you're allowed to be metame the wine, which is amod v'chatei by truma. Kadesha tizke, what are you salvaging? Chulin. So we see that there is precedent for amod v'chatei in one category, kadesha tizke something else, you're saving something else in another category. So how can you tell me, this was how we answered up Rav Yochanan, how can you tell me that we don't allow for amod v'chatei from one world to another?
Fundamentally, when you say hatei, it's a true hate, or
No.
It's just an
Actually, by the truma,
is truma worse?
Truma is worse. So we allow it. Truma is worse than the other case of doing zrika on Shabbos.
I would think so, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So, how do you ever allow from one? Like, what am I missing?
This is the sugya.
It's going to become tamei anyway.
That's going to be the answer to the question. But you're asking fundamentally, why would any chait be allowed?
One category, two categories. I don't know why. Like fundamentally, why did
We want to save things. We don't want to lose korbanos. By the kvasim, it's a hefsed meruba. By the chulin, it's a hefsed meruba. You have wine. Wine is lucrative. Wine is Chatei here is not like let's go back to Shabbos Daf Daled. Chatei Kedesh Yizkeh Chavercha. Like in that case, we said Redias Apas was that we called that a chachma. That was an isser. Yeah, it's an isser derabanan, and let's say you put the challah in, I cannot violate an isser derabanan. Yeah, so we don't allow it. Right, but none.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that's the derabanan versus the oraisa, but it's two separate categories.
Yeah,
It's you and him.
it's the same thing here.
So maybe that's two separate categories. Why? I'm just like, it's a great conversation. I understand the chilukim, but like, why isn't it a non-starter altogether?
Yeah. So Rashi at the bottom of the page, Zibra Maschel Moda, 2 lines from the bottom on Mem Chesed Aleph says, Moda Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yeshua. Afal Gav the Chayish Rabbi Yeshua Lekaman behefsid chulin. So it's about hefsid. Modahu sheim yachol lachzor achar klik tohar lekabel bo afilu revius yatzil. Be better. The afal pi shebenkach ubenkach tipol hatruma. The rest of the chulin will fall. Letocha chulin v'yelech hakol leibud v'shet truma tmei ein lo takanan. Because of hefsid, you're allowed. It's competing factors. What?
It seems so wrong.
No, it's an appropriate question. It also does contrast with the case that I mentioned from Shabbos, because that case we're categorical about it. We don't even like. I mean, I guess it's a short debate, but it's the conclusion. Correct. Doesn't seem like. I mean, zrika. You're doing zrika on a weird kifsa etzeres. It's not. Yeah.
Throwing extra ivar.
Pashut that if you were doing an Isser Deoraisa, we wouldn't allow that. I mean, the only heterim there are like Asedo Chalosase, like, I mean, you need something really strong. Yeah. So you're not, you're doing something that we otherwise wouldn't do. you're
Same thing.
no, the language is provocative.
Right.
So that's our question. Our question is that how can you tell me that there isn't a transfer of chatei from one category, shetizke, to another? Because Rabbi Yeshua seemingly says yitam'ene biyad, that we're allowed to be metame, the truma, in a kli tameh, to save even a revius, and really the bigger goal is to save the chulin. So why don't we assume more broadly that that's the case, that we're allowed to categorically assume that amod v'chatei in one category can apply to another? So the Gemara responds, like Rabbi Sandberg was saying, is shiny hasam dilatuma ka'azla. Because if you do nothing, it becomes tameh. So if you do nothing and it becomes tameh, you might as well do something and it becomes tameh and save as much chulin as you can. Okay, very good. Next. Well, kind of next. 3 lines down on Menachos at base. Ki asa Rav Yitzchak, Tani, when Rav Yitzchak came up, he taught a brisa. He brought a brisa. Kivse atzeres sheshachtan shelo k'mitzvasan. Rashi here says shelo lishman. Different discussions here in Rashi and in Tosfos. He said as follows: if you take the kivse atzeres and the kavana during shchita was shelo lishma, the halacha is that they're psulin u'teubar tzurasan v'yetzu lebeis hasreifa. Says the Gemara that is the outcome. If you do a shchita shelo lishma, at least the way Rashi understands, is that it has to be yetzu lebeis hasreifa after a little teubar tzurasan. Omar Reb Nachman, Mar, referring to Rav Yitzchak, Mar is demakish lehu lechatas, therefore tani psulin. What did we say on Daf Beis and Zvachim? If you do a chatas shelo lishma, it's a 0. So that's what Rav Nachman understands, is that the reason why Rav Yitzchak, in quoting this brisa, holds the way he does is that the Baal Mishnah, the Baal Brisa, where he says that it's psulin u'ubar tzuras mitzvah beis hasreifa, he must hold like that the fact that it's like a chatas, that it's puzzle when it's shelo lishma. Tana Dvei Levi, we have a brisa from the world of Levi, the Gamar. He learned shalmei chova mishalmei nedava. He learned shlamim that were obligatory from shlamim that are not obligatory. And there, Tani, what did he teach? Ksherim. He thought they were kosher. The Tani Levi, what does the brisa say? Ush'ar shalmei nazir sheshachtan shelo k'mitzvasan. When you have the shlamim of a nazir that he has to bring in order to get out of his tuma status, if he shechted it shelo lishma, skip the parentheses, ne'echalin liyom v'layla ve'ein te'unin lo lechem v'lo zroa. Now, what does he hold? They're edible, but it doesn't count for your obligations with your nazir korban. It doesn't count. You're not done yet. You're still tameh. You have to bring another korban. You're not done. So says the Gemara, Meisvei, and this question is going to be a question on Rav Yitzchak. Let's just look up at Rav Yitzchak on the 3rd line, that if you bring the kivsei atzeres shelo lishma, they're puzzle. So what does the brisa say? A third of the way down on Menachos and Beis, Meisvei, Asham ben Shana, V'hevi ben Shtayim. Let's say that an asham needed to be less than a year old, but the animal you brought was more than a year old, it was 2. Or ben Shtayim, V'hevi ben Shana, psulin u'ubar tzurasim yetzu lebeis hasreifa. That first case does align with Rav Yitzchak. The second case won't. Aval olas nazir ve'olas yoledes ve'olas mitzora shahayu b'nei shtei shanim v'shachtu ksherin. Those, in fact, would be kosher. We're more concerned about asham than we are about an ola when it comes to the age of the animal. Here is the klalo shel davar. Kol hakasher be'olas nedava, kasher be'olas chova. Whatever is true by an olas nedava is true by an olas chova, a voluntary ola. The same halachos would apply to an obligatory ola. Pasal bechatas, pasal be'asham. By a chatas, this was something we also saw in Daf Beis in the Mishnah in Zvachim, that whatever the halacha is by a chatas, if you do so, shelo lishma will be pasal be'asham. Chutz mi shelo lishma. Except for shelo lishma, that's where we'll see a little bit of a difference there. But the general psulim by chatas apply by asham, with the exception of shelo lishma. So what we see over here is that whereas Rav Yitzchak was of the opinion that seemingly it would always be pasal shelo bekavana, we see an exception to that rule when it comes to olas. So says the Gemara, Hi Tana, Tana debate Levihu. I agree with you, says the Gemara. I agree with you. That the brisa that we just saw, the Mesve that we just saw, was not authored by Rabbi Yitzchak, nor was it brought by Rabbi Yitzchak, nor does he agree with it. That brisa is in line with Tana de Levi, and therefore the question that we just asked on Rabbi Yitzchak from this brisa falls away. Now the Gemara says, Toshma, we have a question this time on Levi. Now, Levi was of the opinion, as we saw above on the 6th and 7th lines there, that if you have Shalmei Chova and Shalmei Nedava, that they're going to be kosher. So says the Gemara, Toshma, to Tani Levi. This one we have Levi against Levi here. Asham Nazir, V'asham Mitzora, Sheshachtan Shelo Lishman Ksherim. If you have an Asham Nazir, or you have an Asham Mitzora, and you did the Shechita Shelo Lishman, the halacha is that they're kosher. However, v'lo alu l'baylan l'shum chova, but they don't count for your obligation. Shachtan mechusar zman bebaylim. Let's say that someone who was mechusar zman brought the korban early. Zav, it's a mechusar kippurim that brought the korban early. So it's a zav yuledes mitzora. If they brought it early, o shahayu b'nei shtei shanim v'shachtan psula. Now, psulin, I should say. Those would be puzzle. Now, v'im isa. If Rav Nachman was really right, then ligmar mishlamim. Then we should have learned it from a shlamim. So says the Gemara as follows: Shlamim mishlamim gamar, asha mishlamim lo gamar. You can learn shlamim from itself, but you cannot learn from shlamim to asham in this particular case. Says the Gemara, if that's true, v'i gamar shlamim mishlamim ligmar nami asham asham. If you're able to extend from one shlamim to another, you should also be able to extend from one asham to another. And what then would we have? So the Gemara says 8 or 9 lines from the bottom of the page, asham nazir v'asham mitzora, me'asham gzelos v'asham me'ilos. We should have learned about the asham of a nazir and the mitzora, which are used as part of the process of tahara. And we should have learned that me'asham gzelos and asham me'ilos, which are not part of the tahara process. Those are more chait-oriented things. Oh, perhaps the opposite is true. Maybe we should learn in the other direction, that asham gzelos v'asham me'ilos, those which are more chait-oriented, should be learned from that which is tahara-oriented, me'asham nazir v'asham mitzora. But this is against what we learned earlier in the Brisa. So says the Gemara, Amar of Simi bar Ashi, Danin davar shelo behechshero, midavar shelo behechshero. We have to compare a case where you do the wrong thing, you're doing it shelo lishma, to another case that's shelo lishma. Ve'ein danin davar shelo behechshero, midavar shebehechshero. We shouldn't learn something that was done improperly from something that was done properly. So if I bring my asham nazir with shelo lishma, I shouldn't be able to learn that from an asham that's being brought for asham me'ilos. They're apples and oranges. I'm bringing them with shelo b'kavana. So we can only learn things from their like parts. Says the Gemara Velo, is that really true that we can only learn things that are perfectly similar to one another? Let's say you're learning things of davar shelo behechshero from davar shelo behechshero. How do you know that? After all, v'hatanya, we have a brisa. Minayin liyotze. How do we know from an item that was brought outside of the azara and then it was brought back in? Shem alalo yered. So I have an animal. It shouldn't have been brought out of the azara, but I brought it out of the azara. Now that I brought it out of the azara, I bring it back in. The halacha is that if you put it up on the mizbeach, the halacha is lo yered, that it should not become. It should not come down off of the mizbeach. We allow it to burn on the mizbeach. Shehare yotze kosher b'bama. This is a svara we've seen many times. We know that a bama is a pyre mizbech that was allowed during certain times in history. We detailed this relatively recently. Remember Novin Givon and all the different historical moments, Shiloh, all the different things. Where was that Gemara? In this Masechta? Those are over the last. It feels pretty recent. I think it was Vachem. Oh, you know where it is? Your brain's much bigger than mine. I don't remember any of that. So says the Gemara, we know that there's a din. Oh, nice. As if you don't remember, David. Way to play coy. It says that above? Feels like a long time ago. When
It
you,
was a long time ago.
That's what I'm
it
saying.
was, but when you learn, yeah.
I'm not so sure about that.
No,
It does
there is Bama here, but I don't think it's the historical Gemara.
I don't know.
Yeah, but the historical Gemara I think was later. You think what?
Sure.
No idea. I remember it being on an Amud Beis. No?
Got half shots.
On an Amud Beis.
Oh,
Yeah, half. It's pretty.
By the way,
That's
it also
pretty
could
good.
be on an Amud Aleph.
Twice as good as me.
Yeah, that's, yeah, I don't remember where it is, but I remember learning it. Okay. Anyways, so that the Gemara says that I'll show you that we can learn davar she lo behechshero from davar she behechshero because we know that. Where is it? Classic Goral Hagra move from Stan in the back.
Sid Moshe had that happen all the time.
I'm sure he did. I have no doubt. Well, thank you, Reb Moshe. Thank you. So the Gemara says that we know that that which was Yotze and which was brought back in, that if it's put on the Mizbech, that it doesn't come back down, because we know that a Bama, for all intents and purposes, is outside of the Azara, and we allow things to go on the Mizbech, so we allow it to stay on the Mizbech. So, so that's where we see that that's something that is done wrong, yet we allow it to stay up. So the Gemara says, Tana, that halacha that we know is really not from Bama. The core halacha is actually learned from the pasuk of Azos Toras Ha'ola Riba Samichle, that we have a ribui because of juxtapositions of psukim that actually teach us that if something was yotze, that it stays up. So therefore, the question kind of falls away. We're gonna learn for the next. I hope to get to the Mishnah before Mariv. The Gemara says as follows on the top of Mem Tes Amud Aleph. Tani Rabba Bar Barchana Kame de Rab. Kivtze Atzeres. Let's say you have the Kivtze Atzeres. Sheshachtan l'shum elim. You had a different kavana when you were shechting. It was for rams, older. The animals were older. The halacha is ksherin. Technically, the animal's edible. But v'lo alu lebailam l'shum chava. You have to go find other Kivtze Atzeres. You had the wrong kavana. Hamar le Rav, I disagree. Alu v'alu. There's nothing wrong with it at all. Your Kivtze Atzeres are perfect. You don't need new Kivtze Atzeres. It's a huge nafkamina. You might want to hold like Rav in this case if you had in mind for Elim. Amar Rav Chizda mistaber milsa de Rav because savor Elim ushchatan l'shum kvasim. But when he thought that they were Elim and he had kavana for the sake of kvasim, shari kvasim l'shum kvasim nishchatu. But what I don't understand about Rav is aval kasavor Elim. If he thought they were Elim ushchatan l'shum Elim, lo, that should not work at all because akira b'taus havya akira. If your mindset is wrong, even if it's betos, it's just wrong. So he's kind of pushing on Rabba. I don't understand your shita. And the Rabba Omar Akira betos lo havya Akira. He holds that Akira betos is not considered an Akira. So that would be a machlokas in this case of if he had in mind the Elim when he was doing the Kivsei Atzeres. Omar Rabba, correcting the language here, Umosvina Nashmaitin, Rabba actually has a problem with his own shita. Rabba holds that Akira betos lo havya Akira, that if you had an accidental kavana, it's not considered an Akira. What is his question? Umosvina Nashmaitin, he has a problem with a Gemara that we saw in Nedarim. HaKohanim shepiglu bebikdash. If you have Kohanim who were mefagel, if they did so, Mazidin, the halacha is chayovet. Hashogigin pturin. So says the Gemara, V'tani Allah, pigul and pigul hechidami. What was the case where they were mefagil? Ilema de yada de chatas who, if he knew that it was a korban chatas, the kamachashiv balashum shlamim, and he had in mind to do a shlamim, well, you're just bad at your job. You're a kohen. You need to know what animal you're working with. You got to ask the Bailim, what am I bringing for? You got to ask. But if you have a chatas and you know that and you call it a shlamim, hi shogegin, that's mazidinhu. That case can't be the shogegin. Elolav, it must be that what was the case of shogeg? The kasavor shlamim who he thought it was shlamim. The kamachashev ba l'shum shlamim. He was wrong. It was a chatas. He thought it was a shlamim, and he had mind that it was a shlamim. The katani pigul and pigul. And what do we see? Alma akira betos havya akira against Rabbah. Rabbah was of the opinion on the 12th line of the Gemara, approximately, that akira betos lo havya akira. But he's bothered by this Mishnah from Nadar, from the Bryce and Nadarim, that says, no, even when you make a toast, the animal was a chatos, but the Kohen thought it was a shlamim and had kavana for a shlamim. The Bryce says it's pigul. If you have a machsheves pigul on that animal, it's pigul d'oraisa. That must be, says Rabbah, against himself. It must be that akira betos is havya akira. So the Gemara says a third of the way down, no. Abaye comes to save Rabbah. Amar le Abaye. Le'olam diyada de chatasi. No. This Kohen knew that it was a chatas. V'kamechashe ba l'shum shlamim. And his mindset was that it was a shlamim. But, uve omer mutter. His shogeg was that he thought it was mutter to have that kavana. Pashut, he did the wrong thing, but he thought that it was the right thing. So, is that a shogeg or is that not a shogeg? How do we define a shogeg? I think that I should have the kavana of a shlamim. So I think I'm doing it right, but I'm wrong. So says the Gemara, that was the case of shogeg in our Gemara. Masiv Reb Zera asks, let's bring this into the world of Mincha, where some of the halachos are different, a third of the way down, heading to the Mishnah. Reb Shimon Omer, Kol Menachos Shenikmetu Shelo Lishman Ksheros. We've seen this before in Zvachim. Any korban mincha, where the kmitza, which is equivalent to the shchita, where the kmitza was done, shelo lishma dalachas kasher, va'alu labaylam l'shum chova. She'ein hamenachos domos l'zvachim. But the menachos were more makel than we are with the zvachim. She'akometz machvas l'shum marcheshes. When I do the kmitza on a machvas, which is one type of korban mincha, and the pans are different, and the content is different, the machvas, and I do it for the kavan of the marcheshes, literally look at what you're doing. Shallow pan versus deep pan. Dry versus moist mincha. I don't care what kavana you have, just look. Einayim mochichos that this is what's happening. We don't really, so we're much less concerned about that. So we're much more makil by menachos. Chareva l'shum belula. And if you have one that's dry versus one that has oil, maseh mochichen lashi chareva. Right? Aval bizvachim eino kain. Shchita achas lekulan. It all looks exactly the same. Kabbalah achas lekulan. When blood is flowing out of the neck, it looks exactly the same. There's no chareva versus belula when it comes to zvachim. Zrika achas lekulan. When you do zrika, the blood sprinkles exactly the same way. So says the Gemara, Heichi Dami. So what is the case of a korban mincha that's done shelo lishma? How do we have a case like that at all? We know that you know exactly what's going on. So we know that you have the wrong kavanah. So says the Gemara, it's still you still have the wrong kavanah. We're kind of pushing on the principle that kol hamenachos should be ksheros. Elolav, it must be the kasavor marcheshesi. He thought that it in fact was a marcheshes. V'kakamitz la l'shu marcheshes v'ta'a. And he did the kmitza with that kavana, but he made a mistake. What do we infer from here? That akira betos, not like menachos, but akira betos is an akira like Rabbi Zvachim, Kasha, and Rabbah yet again. The Gemara responds as follows, and with this answer of Abaye, we'll get to the Mishnah and we'll close for the day. Amar le Abaye, le'olam, what's the case of shogeg by a menachos? Is the yada the machvasi. We know that it's a machvas. The kakamitz la l'shum marcheshes. It's a machvas, your kavan is for marcheshes. Udika amres ki maaseh mochichen alei my habe. What if you don't care about the fact that it's maaseh mochichen, your kavana is wrong? So Rava l'taime, to Amar Rava, and this is, I wish we had more time, this is a nuanced and seemingly backwards principle. Says the Gemara, the Amar Rav is really Rabba. The Amar Rabba, machshava de lo minkara pasal rachmana. Machshava de minkara lo pasal rachmana. If you have a machshava that I can see is wrong by a menachos, then the halacha is that it's not pasal. It's a shtickle chiddush, but that is why this principle of this principle of akir betos havi akir by Menachos is not a problem for our case of Rabbah, because the world of Menachos and the world of Zvachim are very different. We are going to pause right here. I'll give you an update when I know and I'm able to learn a little bit more. We're not learning tomorrow night, Pasha. We're not learning the next night, I guess, unless you want to learn the next night, but I presume you don't. What? It's hard enough sober. We'll have to see how things go.
Easier. Yeah.
Maybe it's easier. Oh, now we're talking.
Yeah, something.
Now you're onto something. This is amazing. All right, everybody. Wishing you all a beautiful night of Freilich and Purim.